Am I okay right now?
Yeah, I think we're all here.
Good evening, and for those who may not know, my name is Elliot Clark. I'm Roger's son-in-law, and at Phyllis's request, the one to take us on a memorial journey, paying tribute to Roger under the goodness of God and in the presence of all who loved him. The flowers, the pictures, the medals, the trophies on display were most certainly not Roger's idea, but they are pretty fantastic. So where do we go from here? How do we do it when Roger would tell you to just get on with it? It doesn't seem possible. 2 weeks have passed and we still grieve. With this life-altering change, we'll feel the pain of this loss forever. Our hearts have been broken to pieces, our foundation shaken, and the first person who would show up to make things better is now gone. Roger was a builder. He loved to build things and did so through vision. He built things in a way he thought they should be built. He modeled what he thought the best builder would do. He built things efficient, and most often, he did it in a way where the value would far out exceed the cost, and at a pace afforded him the time to build more. The fact that all of us have been impacted in our lives by the greatness of Roger prepares us to pick up the pieces and rebuild, engaging a blueprint that has been perfected over 85 years to be our guide. You see, there's really only two options in life: make progress or make excuses. And Roger never made excuses. When most would quit, he kept going. When the work became extremely difficult, he worked harder. And when the rewards were handed out for his efforts, he often stood on the podium, and most often he stood at the top alone. Roger won because he never stopped, which made it impossible for the rest of us to keep up. He carved a trail through time, and we just chased in the wake. A river cuts through rock not because of its power, but its persistence. You don't give up unless you're forced, and in the end, he was most definitely forced to submit, but he never quit. Loyalty was a lifestyle for Roger. You cannot expect loyalty from those who cannot give you honesty. He married the most honest woman we know in Phyllis. See, I told you Lane, I would make you more than 5 minutes. The most loyal person that we've ever met, the most honest person in Phyllis, and he gave the most loyal version of himself as a husband and father and a grandfather. Live for what today has to offer, not for what yesterday took away. It's time to get on with it by working harder, living loyal, and with greater honesty. Never quitting, and remembering, as Roger stated last August when he received the award from the State Senate and Marine Corps, that family is everything. Let us pray. Jesus, you said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 4, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." We are mourning. Send us your comfort now. Wrap your arms around us and hold us tight. Send angels of mercy to all of us. Shower your courage on all who gather here. Keep close Roger's son Dan as he's recovering from surgery and unable to travel from Montana with his wife Rhonda and Montana family. Lift up thy countenance upon Roger and give him peace. Please join me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Amen. And now I'd like to invite Roger's daughter-in-law, Sherry, to come forward with the reading.
The reading is taken from 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18, chapter 5, 1 through 9. Therefore, we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Now we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile we groan, longing to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, because when we are clothed, we will not be found naked. For while we are in this tent, we groan and are burdened, because we do not wish to be unclothed, but to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. Now it is God who has made us for this very purpose and has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. Therefore we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. We live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So we make it our goal to please Him, whether we are at home in the body or away from it.
At this time, if I could please have our good friend Shelley DeGrant, accompanied by her father John, to come forward for Amazing Grace.
Whatever happens here, please know it's from the heart.
That goes for me too.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved and set me free. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Yea, when this flesh and heart shall fail, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace.
If I could please at this time invite Roger's grandson Isaac to come forward with a reading of Roger's obituary.
Roger Lee Block, age 85, passed away peacefully on Friday, May 24th, 2024, in the comfort of the home he constructed 56 years ago, surrounded by the love of his family. Roger was born on March 19th, 1939, in Watertown, Wisconsin, to Arthur and Marcella Buntrock Block. Roger was a graduate of Watertown High School with the class of 1957. He was the first Watertown athlete in history to become a four-time track and field letter winner. Committed to service to his country, Roger enlisted in the United States Marine Corps in 1958 and was stationed at Camp Pendleton and Camp Matthews before being honorably discharged in 1961. Roger received Wisconsin State Senate recognition this past August in conjunction with the Watertown Marine Corps League for his continued service to the beautification of Aero Park. Roger continued his education at the University of Stevens Point for 2 years before co-owning and operating Blacktop Service for 22 years. Roger then became a glazer for Charles Davids and Sons, where his employment kept him from retiring until his late 60s. Roger married the love of his life, Phyllis Hurdle, on June 20th, 1964, at St. Bernard's Catholic Church. Through 60 years of marriage, Roger and Phyllis raised 3 children, Daniel, Charles, and Amy. Roger was a podium finisher at the highest levels of competition, medaling in marathons, world-class canoe racing, and multiple top finishes in the Birkebeiner. Roger started playing hockey as a child and continued playing competitively into his 70s. His passion for competition and athletics was passed down to his children and grandchildren, where Roger was a faithful supporter. Roger was bound by nature and could, most days, be found on a tractor, behind a chainsaw, and over a shovel in his garden. His expert marksmanship in the Marine Corps carried over to the woods, where hunting led to annual success. Roger is survived by his wife Phyllis, sons Daniel L. and Rhonda Block of Columbia Falls, Montana, Charles J. and Sherry Block of Kingman, Arizona, and daughter Amy and Elliot Clark of Watertown, Wisconsin. Grandchildren Joshua Fisher, Elena, Aiden, and Eli Clark, Isaac and Samuel Block, step-granddaughters Emily and Sarah, and 4 step-great-grandchildren, sister Carol J. Block of Watertown, and brother-in-law Roy Block of Watertown, Wisconsin. He was preceded in death by his parents, Arthur and Marcella Block, brothers Lee, Tom, and sister Betty. Interment will take place at St. Henry's Catholic Church at a later date. Hofmeister Funeral Home and Cremation Service is serving the family. Special thank you to family, neighbors, and friends for their help and support. Thank you to Rainbow Hospice for the compassionate care.
At this time, if I could please invite Roger's son Charlie up. Dan had prepared some words. It's unfortunate that Dan could not be here, getting a hip replacement last week, so Charlie's going to come up and read some words that Dan had prepared for today.
Legends live forever. As I truck into the Swan River put-in for a kayaking workout the morning after my dad passed away, it is 44 degrees and steadily raining. It is a perfect day for paddling and gaining an advantage on the competition because no one else will be out on the water. I can picture Dad and Dick David canoeing up to the CW Bridge and hearing the 2 teenagers with their fishing rods calling out, Hey, how old are you guys? At plus 80 years old, they were still paddling for 2 hours. When you paddled with those guys, you quickly learned to relish the one break you'd get for 30 seconds for a sip of water at the turnaround point. Missing just one match stroke did not go unnoticed. I also vividly remember Dad and Bill Seifert winning the Masters Marathon National Canoe Championship race. They had formulated a brilliant race plan that during the long downhill section of the portage, Bill would carry both paddles and run alongside Dad while he alone dragged the Kevlar boat by the bow down the steep grassy embankment. Sure enough, they took the race lead on land and never looked back. I want to thank everyone for coming out and showing your support for our family. I am disappointed I can't be here today in person to honor my dad and hear so many wonderful stories, but at least I can share a couple written memories that influenced me. During our last conversation, he was adamant that I get my hip fixed. I think one of his few regrets in life was not getting his knee replaced 15 years ago. Well, we all know how tough and stubborn he was. These inherited traits are common in the Block family lineage and were also taught and reinforced. We were told there is no such word as can't, and that we shouldn't show much emotion. I'm still working on that, especially when I'm coaching basketball, when the Packers are struggling, or when I'm losing to my brother Charlie. Like Coach John Wooden said, if you don't have time to do a job right the first time, when will you have time to do it again? An insight into Dad came when I had to deliver the hardest message ever to him on Labor Day weekend in 1999. My folks had just arrived to visit me in Montana. At 5:30 a.m. the next morning, Uncle Lee called to inform us that Grandma Marcella, Dad's mom, had just passed away. I courageously shared the dreaded news without my voice cracking. Dad simply replied, Later, we somberly hiked a short and windy trail to Stanton Lake near Glacier before they abruptly drove back. No tears were shed, only a few words were spoken, but I knew the impression, the impact, and the examples this wonderful and remarkable 99-year-old woman had left on my dad and on the entire family. Every day I figure out how I could fit a workout into my schedule. Hard work was instilled in us at an early age, and hard work usually had a physical component. So I was inspired and dedicated to do something every day to earn our Father's approval and the chance that he asked, "What have you accomplished today?" Amy calls it tough love. Praise definitely had to be earned. The summer after graduating high school, I had the opportunity to work with my dad in his blacktopping business. It was an awesome job, working 10 to 14-hour days, paving driveways and parking lots. It was demanding physical labor under a hot sun, but I loved it. I got to run the paver and took a lot of pride in my job working with Alan and David Schmid and the rest of the boys. I thought driving the paver was quite an honor. I soon realized that giving me that task was probably because it was easier for Dad to yell at me than the rest of the crew when something went awry. Dad ran an efficient enterprise, but after 25 years it was time for him to move on. I also think he wanted me to see the importance of gaining a higher education and how it would lead to other opportunities. One of my fondest memories of my dad was sitting around the dinner table with his brother Tom when his brother Tom was visiting, and they retold and relived favorite childhood stories. It was a miracle he survived his youth. He endured multiple concussions, from broken rope swings to ice cake riding escapades down below the dam on the mighty Rock River. Usually he was serious, focused, and so stoic that it was good to see him laugh. Several times when I was 10 to 12 years old, we would ride in the pickup truck to the farm to cut firewood or hunt in complete silence. It is a special bond when you don't have to say anything, but still feel comfortable. I remember Dad saying, "The more you talk, the more people realize how much you don't know. Saying less was a strategy I used many times, especially as a principal. Therefore, when Dad spoke, it carried more meaning and was easier to remember. When I went off to Marquette, he reminded me, don't get caught up running with the rich crowd. When I left for the mountains of Glacier, he advised, remember, it is easier to climb up than it is to climb down. As you probably know, Dad excelled at several sports and activities besides canoeing, including hunting, running, cross-country skiing, and hockey. Sharing time on the ice, battling for pucks together, and skiing along the snowy riverbanks are some of my most cherished memories. What you may not know was the important role cardboard boxes played into some of these endeavors. On more than one occasion, Mom had to track down a refrigerator box so Dad could put it in the truck bed to sleep in the night before deer hunting season opened, when he was hunting west in the hills west of Madison. One of the seasons, I was home and a monsoon storm blew in. I just shook my head thinking about Dad shivering all night in an old soggy box. Well into his 70s, Dad played hockey and would drive up to Beaver Dam at 9 o'clock on Friday and Sunday nights. Shoot, he even cut the ice with the Zamboni. Finally, after 20 years, one of the guys bought him an official hockey bag so he wouldn't have to haul all his gear in his cardboard box anymore. As I said, Dad sure lived to ski in the winter. If there were 2 inches of snow or 2 inches of ice on the river, he was going. I remember it was 20 degrees below zero. He would come in with icicles dangling off his face mask and his frozen mustache. Often the dogs could not even keep up, and one day he had to go back out and retrieve our Newfoundland. Through these athletic pursuits, Dad showed us what competitive desire really is and how to will your mind to push yourself farther and faster. We knew the difference between race mode and participant mode. Dad made several birdhouses for gifts, thus demonstrating again his affinity to nature and woodworking. He even built one for one of his recent doctors and presented it with a special bird field guide. Whether plowing, shoveling, fixing things, or cutting trees, Dad certainly helped out a lot of people. However, being out in the woods, cutting firewood trumped everything as his true passion. The saying goes, a woodcutter is twice warmed. When you cut wood, load it in the truck, unload it, split it, stack it, and then put it in the stove, I know I was warmed up more than 2 times. Of course, no one else ever actually got to cut with the chainsaw until this year. One of the last lessons he taught us was how to saw correctly. Dad also had a clever, fun, and a somewhat mischievous side of his personality that would appear from time to time. I remember a couple Christmas pranks with his brother Lee. When Lee was getting reluctant to get a Christmas tree, we dropped one off for him already decorated with lights. Then we took the tree with us when we left. Another year, when Uncle Lee received a Japanese doll encased in glass, we rushed ahead to Betty and Roy's place to set up a shrine display of Kermit the Frog, enshrouded in plastic saran wrap in a clothes basket. I think Dad's last trick and laugh played on me was a combined cohort of nature spirits. The last night before Dad passed away, around midnight, he was thrashing around uttering his last coherent words. Meanwhile, at roughly the same time in Montana, as I was getting into bed, I was startled by an immense amount of chaos and commotion downstairs. What was going on? I crept down to investigate and spied the cats, alerting me that the fracas was outside. I flicked on the back porch light and slowly leaned out to the deck. There, a mere 15 feet away, a thirsty black bear staring at me while guarding the grill and propane tank he had just swatted off the porch onto the muddy grass. I gently raised my voice to scare the two-tone brown and black bruin away from the burger juice-soaked barbecue grill. Reluctantly, after 20 seconds, he retreated 30 feet out into the yard before pausing to pose again in a standoffish position. Finally, my clapping and banging the galvanized plant watering can on a deck chair convinced him to huff away and he crashed into the brush, spooking the neighbors' horses. Quite a coincidence, since only one other time has a bear ventured onto the deck in 24 years. Thanks, Dad, for sending me such a special farewell siren. As I wrap this up and reflect,
Of course, one of our sons wanted to come use it. I'm like, no way, it'll be 23 years before you guys can use it. At this time, if I could please invite forever family friends, Dan and Pat Ludwig, to eulogize Roger.
I love it, forever family friends. Thank you. When we started to work on putting our thoughts of Roger down on paper, we were reminded of the numerous ways in which Roger has influenced our lives. Standing in line here today, hearing more stories, you realize how much he's influenced. It soon dawned on us that this is his legacy, his impact on so many lives, ours, his children, his grandchildren, the people that are here, our children, and we're sure our grandchildren. Roger introduced us to many activities and sparked interests that we cherish to this day and have passed on to our kids.
One inspiration for us was Roger's love of the river. We spent countless hours canoeing, skiing the Rock River because of Roger's influence. We were amazed at his strength and power as a top U.S. marathon canoeist. Watching various races he and his partners paddled with such natural intensity was inspiring. While winter skiing on the Rock River, he taught us to find the river current beneath the ice, which allowed us to stay on thick ice while catching sight of a river otter or noticing its belly sliding trail in the snow or a bald eagle soaring overhead. We always knew when the ice was ready, as we would see a ski trail Roger had just set hours earlier.
There were years when the river would freeze solid without being covered with snow. Roger figured out a way to strap our daughter, who was probably maybe a year and a half old, into a high chair seat, attach it to an old flexible flyer, and then it enabled he took the hockey stick, pushed it into the front of it so that it enabled it to be pushed. We could skate for miles on the Rock River and Crawfish Rivers. So it wasn't just the Rock River that Roger loved. It was the idea of being on water that he enjoyed. We were included in a monumental trip their family planned, canoeing 150 miles of the Missouri River in Montana, which followed the Lewis and Clark Trail. A trip that made us feel like we were far from civilization, well, at least for a while. Experienced what it would be like to have used only the rivers as a means of transportation, and imagine what life would have been like long ago.
Roger had a love for competition and athletic endeavors. He was always finding a way to make you challenge yourself, push yourself to do better. Roger was part of an informal running team here in town, the Claire Bruin team. Once, at the first L's run I did with Roger, we did a warm-up on the Marquette campus. I never had a warm-up so intense before and ran prior to that first race with him. Now I never forget to warm up. I would watch Roger run the half marathon while I was always running the 5 mile at the Glenequik Height in Jefferson. He always encouraged me to try a half marathon, and I finally ran one in Janesville while using Roger's advice. And I discovered that it wasn't that difficult if you just adjust your pace. He was always a good teacher, always giving tips to improve your technique.
I clearly remember the first time we met Roger. I was in Jefferson in a run, and I was running with a friend, when a woman came up alongside of us, and she introduced us. When I heard Phyllis's name, I said, "Oh, you're Phyllis Block. I read your name in race results all the time," and I wondered who you were. So Phyllis and I continued on talking until about a half mile remaining in the race, and Phyllis took off and soundly beat me to the finish line. While recovering at the end, she introduced both Dan and I to Roger for the first time, and she mentioned the things that we talked about. He looked at us and said, well, these are Roger's first words to me, besides hello. "If you had enough energy to talk the whole race, you didn't run fast enough." That was the Roger we had come to know and love. He always wanted you to do your best and to try your hardest.
Yearly, Roger would go deer hunting. One year he invited me to go along. We were near the Governor Dodge State Park, staying at Frank Brazelton's hunting cabin. We loved hunting and wanted me to experience what he had loved. At sunrise of opening day, gunshots could be heard continuously in rapid fire, one after another, finally tapering to about 1 every 5 seconds, but not a deer could be seen. Our group came home only with stories.
One New Year's Eve with the temperatures well below zero. I think they were like -12 to -15. We had reservations for dinner at Donnie's Supper Club in Pipersville. At Block's house, Roger suggests we walk to Donnie's instead of taking our cars. So we all hiked under a full moon, -15 degrees in the bitter cold, on the frozen river, all the way down to Donnie's. Needless to say, Donnie the owner talked about that for years.
Probably Roger's greatest legacy for our family was his love of the American Birkebeiner and Hayward. When we were together, we would spend hours recalling races of various years, trail conditions, and how specific hills were skied, and laughed at the challenging the race was, but when completed, it was such a sense of accomplishment. Roger always placed near the top of the results. One year he took third in his age group, which was an incredible feat considering this was an international race with thousands of skiers. We were always in awe of his ability. Just 2 months ago, Roger wanted to know about the conditions of this year's Birkie and the small details on how my wax worked on the man-made snow. My races were never as successful as Roger's, but he was always interested in how I finished.
And we can't forget to mention Roger's love of Glacier National Park. We took quite a few trips with both he and Phyllis to Montana to visit and hike with Danny. One of the most memorable hikes was going from Logan's Pass to Granite Park Chalet, up and over Swift Current Pass, down along the riverbed, and ending at Many Glacier. Nothing short of a marathon hike in the mountains. Not only did Roger appreciate the beauty as you looked outward in Glacier, but he drew attention to looking down, seeing the small things, the bare grass in bloom, countless flowers, the traces of small animals, footprints, rock formations, any signs of the changing environment around you. He'd add stories about the habitats and behavior of the animals on the trail. He got you to look at details around you, making the experiences so much more memorable. He really was a modern-day John Muir.
We are very, very thankful to have Roger in our lives. His legacy will live on. Rest in peace, Roger, knowing that many life lessons you have quietly taught all of us through your example lives on in the next generations. Thank you.
Roger, without a doubt, was one of the most manliest men that you could ever meet in your life. And as the son-in-law who thought he was pretty athletic, I wanted to prove myself to him. So the first chance would be to go for a hike. We hiked a lot of miles. The next thing we'd get in a canoe and it was head down going up the Wisconsin River. And then it was on the ski trail where we'd do 1 lap and he'd do 3. And there were several times early on when I just asked Amy, what's wrong with your family? Is there anything they don't do for fun? And she said, well, sure we do. We do wood. So that was the fun of doing wood. At this time, I'd like to invite Roger's oldest grandson, Josh, to come forward.
Hi there. So I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time with my grandfather growing up. My grandma would pick me up from kindergarten every morning or every afternoon and take me back out to their house, and I'd spend the afternoon and just ecstatic to play with all the different toys at the house. And one thing Grandpa was really proud that he was able to buy for me. He's a diehard John Deere guy, of course. They're the best. Nothing runs like a deer. But he was so proud to be able to buy these cast iron John Deere tractors that you would pedal, and you pedal them up the driveway and take the dogs for a walk. And he would, as I was pedaling up the driveway, their driveway had quite an incline, and I would struggle getting up that incline. But I never had to worry because Grandpa had prepared a stick. He had whittled the end just perfect so it would fit on the hitch of the little pedal tractor, and he would push me up the hill. And he would push me a little bit, but it wasn't a free pass. I still had to pedal, of course. So I think that's just kind of the perfect metaphor to the role model that he was in my life, and he probably was in most of my siblings' lives. You know, that he would push us, he would let us get to the point where we would struggle and we would be tested, and he would encourage us to continue to test ourselves, and to really just find out who we are as people, and to prove to ourselves that we were capable of doing anything and being anybody that we wanted to be. So I wouldn't trade my time with my grandma and my grandpa for the world. They're such a huge part of who I am, and I couldn't be more proud of that. So, thank you guys.
Just so people don't leave here tonight, know that Roger wasn't better than me at everything. And it took me a while to figure this out. Actually, it was probably until about 10 years ago that I finally figured it out when the gift giving came around Christmas time. And Amy would open her gift, and it was a new drill. And I opened my gift, and it was the New Wave cooker. The next year, Amy got a brand new loppers. And I opened my gift, and I got the copper kettle. And it didn't stop there. I have the cast iron skillet. So Roger loved the way I cooked, and I knew my place with Roger was in the kitchen. Roger couldn't cook. And a real testament to my cooking ability was Roger's extreme dislike for cheese, but he sure loved my lasagna. So. At this time, I would like to invite, I know there's just going through the line and listening to the stories, I came to the realization that either Roger worked the blacktop business for a really long time, or he was a really tough boss, because it seemed like I met like 20 of his workers that worked for Roger. So I know there's a ton of great stories out there. There's some unbelievable canoeing stories. So at this time, if anybody would like to come forward and share in any of those stories, we'd appreciate that. At this time, too, if nobody has, I'd like to invite my daughter, Elena, who has some lessons that everybody learned from Grandpa.
There couldn't have possibly been enough time, within this lifetime or the next, to learn all of Grandpa's wisdom. But we tried our best to soak up all of that knowledge, and as a family, we came up with a list of just some of the life lessons we have learned over the years. A man's handshake is all you need to seal a deal. A raised bucket on a tractor can be used for many tasks, like saving a bird trapped in a downspout, hanging a DIY pallet swing, attaching Christmas lights to a tall pine tree, dumping hose water over heads, replacing a basketball backboard, pushing posts into the ground to fence goats or chickens, or simply giving amusement rides. You can lay your own ski trails with the right weight sitting on the groomer. You can raise a lot of tomatoes in a small space. You should always dig your garden by hand before you rototill. If you have rope and duct tape, you can fix about anything. If you break a glass door playing beer darts, you should be able to fix that with recycled glass found in the yard. My bad. A chicken coop can be constructed in less than a day with scrap wood. On every walk, pick up sticks. You can and should eat mushrooms out of the woods. The size of the hole in a birdhouse will determine who builds a nest. The names of trees and birds were taught, but seldom learned. You can skate the river on thin ice if you move fast enough. You don't need a tent to camp. Sometimes a large refrigerator box will do. Willie's Roadhouse Radio never gets old, even if the feature music for an entire road trip is yodeling. Don't be a knothead. No. Most answers can be found in the woods, and those that can't will be found in an old set of encyclopedias. When hunting, it is possible to bring down 3 deer in one sitting. You don't need to always be talking to say a lot. Always take the time to appreciate the night sky and never let any astronomical phenomenon go unviewed, even if you must stay up late or trek in your jammies to find an area void of light pollution. You don't need a fancy water bottle to drink, an old syrup bottle will do. Watching a Western is just as good the 5th time as it is the first time. If you want something done right, do it yourself. Always help your neighbors. Actually, always help anyone in need. Stop on the side of the road to pick up an abandoned glove. Soon you'll have a collection of left-handed gloves. Keep binoculars handy because you never know when a pileated woodpecker may show up. You can get poison ivy any time of the year. There's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing choices. There's no bad time to get a load of wood. 1 face cord equals 1 week of heat. Pine has no place being burned inside the house, and leave basswood in the woods. If you want a forest, plant a lot of trees. Hamburgers taste best grilled over a wood fire. You should always work hard and do your best. A workday lasts until the work is done. In a running race, stick to the inside, dig uphill, and kick at the end. And remember that you'll never beat Grandpa's best times. A night watching slides is better than a night out. On a road trip, you don't need a hotel when you can sleep at a wayside. You can kill a rattlesnake with just a stick and a good swing. When canoeing, hut means switch sides. You can build most things with your own 2 hands and some common sense. And finally, love is unconditional and does last a lifetime. I'm sure we could sit here all night compiling a never-ending list of everything we learned from such a monumental man. But as Grandpa would say, let's get on with it. And remember him whenever we catch ourselves doing anything we learned from Grandpa Roger.
I had the good fortune to be able to join Roger and Phyllis on trips to Beaver Dam for hockey a few nights. And there's a lot of things that I remember, but some of the things I remember the most was anytime that I even sniffed a breakaway, I all of a sudden did not have my skates from under me. And I'd look back, and here was Roger who would take my skates out from any time I looked like I was even going to score. He'd make sure I did it. There was one night that hockey started really late at night in Beaver Dam. They couldn't usually get ice time until after 10:30, so Roger and Phyllis picked me up. It was a little after 10, and we were headed to Beaver Dam, and all of a sudden Roger got pulled over. And the police officer came up, and he looked at his license. He said, Mr. Black, where are you going in such a hurry? He's like, well, I have a hockey game. And he shook his stick in 20 minutes. He said, you're 66 years old. If you're in that big of in a hurry to get to the hockey game, don't let me stop you. Off we went to play hockey. At this time, we've shared on the blue pamphlets the lyrics to Eagle's Wings, and we'd like everybody to join in for this song.
You angels he's given a command to guard you in all of your ways. Above their hands they will bear you up, lest you touch your foot against the stone. And he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, make you to shine like the star, and hold you in the palm of his hand. And hold you in the palm of his hand.
Roger was the best, no doubt about it. One of Roger's favorite things to do is to celebrate different events at our home. And so we would like to invite everybody, for sure everybody, to come out to our home following for more stories and more fellowship. To Roger, I raise one more to you. Taste the rust. Rest in peace, Roger. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. This memorial service has ended. Thank you. And our address is on the back of, on the blue sheet on the Gypsy Road.